If you're a Raiders fan and you want to have more Raiders draft videos, live coverage of the 2025 NFL Draft, hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. I promise you this, we're going to be live all 7 rounds, every single pick. In fact, you're going to get the picks here at Chat Sports before you see them up there on TV. If you enjoyed our live free agency coverage over 30 hours, you're going to love what we do for the NFL Draft. It's why Chat Sports is actually standing here today. Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and coming up on today's show, I'm going to tell you what I want Pete Carroll John Spytek to do at the number 6 pick during the 2025 NFL Draft. Think of it like this. The Raiders are on the clock, and we got a big-time decision to make. What I am going to do is I'm going to tell you the top 10 players, top 10 things that I want the Raiders to do when they are officially on the clock when it is the 2025 NFL Draft. So I'm going to be ranking these players from 10 all the way down to 1. The person at number 1 is what I want the Raiders to do at pick number 6. So first, though, before we get into this, again, I'm going to go from 10. I'm going to work my way down to 1, but I did want to mention that there are certain players that I do not have in this ranking for the simple fact of I don't think that they're going to be there at number 6. So what I ended up doing was I ended up running a bunch of mock drafts, and essentially Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, and Travis Hunter were never available to me at number 6. So because of that, they're not going to be featured in this video. Though I think y'all know where I stand on Cam Ward. I still would take Cam Ward at 6 if he was there, and that's even with Geno Smith. So let's first go to number 10 here, and it's going to be Jalon Walker, edge rusher out of Georgia. I think he is a phenomenal specimen. He is a great, great athlete, and I understand that the Raiders already have Malcolm Koonce. But you know what? I'll tell you what, this is a great, great Caleb Chasen type of replacement. Quite frankly, you go out and you draft Jalon Walker, you turn Malcolm Koonce into your Caleb Chasen replacement. 6 sacks last season for the Georgia Bulldogs. Did play outside linebacker, but I think he's a truly elite edge prospect. Long frame, great burst. That change of direction speed is something that I love to be able to see. He can also be used to cover tight ends. I'll admit, watching a linebacker cover a tight end in college is a lot different than watching Jalon Walker cover a tight end in the pros. Like, it could be something that he does from time to time, but 9 out of 10 times, I want Walker pinning his ears back, getting north and south, and going out and getting his quarterback. Next guy coming up here on the list is somebody that I'll consider a my guy. I started talking about Jihaad Campbell many, many months ago, and I said, this is my favorite linebacker, and he's going to climb up draft boards. And now, I can't even believe it, he's in my top 9 overall prospects that I would be interested for the Raiders to draft. I will say this. This is a little bit early at number 6, I'm not going to lie to y'all, but the Raiders need another linebacker. And you're looking at the best linebacker in this group. He had 119 tackles, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. When you lead a team, especially a team that is as talented as what Alabama was on the defensive side of the football, when you lead them in tackles for loss, sacks, forced fumbles, not only is he a great athlete that's got legit sideline-to-sideline speed, and it might be the best in this class, I also said this on a show, and I'm going to stick to it. I think that he's talented enough to be an edge. And when I watch Jihaad Campbell's tape, it kind of reminds me of somebody like Micah Parsons, where you're going, this dude is an absolute alien on the football field. Why are we not using him as an edge? And I think somebody like a Jihaad Campbell could be used like that, where I almost wonder in today's day and age in the NFL, we always talk about versatility at safety, versatility, corners, versatility here and there. I'm starting to wonder if a versatile linebacker that can drop back into coverage, that can go sideline to sideline, but also can blitz 5 out of 10 times, is going to be a rule that starts popping up here a little bit. Jihaad Campbell comes in here, though, at number 9. Let's go to number 8 on my list. I got to go Will Johnson. And all of these rankings are obviously after free agency, and it's also after some of the moves that the Raiders have, and let's be real, have not made. Will Johnson, though, is going to come in here at number 8, 6'2", 200-pound cornerback out of Michigan. I'll tell you this right now. He is no longer my number 1 cornerback that I think that the Raiders could and should draft. He did have an injury which really hurt his season last year, but he's long, he's athletic. We know Pete Carroll loves those type of cornerback prospects. His biggest weakness is his recovery speed. I wish I could have seen what he would have ran in the 40. I don't expect a lot. He does have an eye for making plays, and you can tell that he wants to go get a pick. You can tell that he wants to make it happen. And if the Raiders are able to get pressure with 4, Will Johnson's going to be a good corner. If the Raiders are unable to get pressure and Will Johnson's got to, play with players a little bit longer than what he's accustomed to, that could hurt him a little bit because he has this kind of like Jack Jones type of mentality. He's just way, way better than what Jack Jones is. But the double move hurts Will Johnson. And I think it's because he's so used to playing where he knows the quarterback's got to get rid of the ball quickly. And when he is able to play with that level of confidence, he's unbelievable. It's just I worry that he could struggle in year 1. And I don't want to compare to Jacorian Bennett because he's way better than Jacorian. But like Jacorian struggled in year 1 and was a lot better in year 2, I could see a similar path like that with Will Johnson. So my question is, this is going to be the pinned comment here on today's show. Who do you want the Raiders to draft at pick number 6? Let me know the player that you're thinking about. My answer in terms of who I want the Raiders to draft at pick number 6, you're going to have to wait to watch at the very end of today's show. Let's go to number 7. I got Jahdae Barron, cornerback from Texas, and I'm putting Jahdae Barron above Will Johnson based on the fit with Pete Carroll, based on the fit with Patrick Graham. When you watch players go out there do their thing, he kind of reminds me of a Brian Branch where teams didn't know exactly where to put him as a safety or as a corner. They just said, we're going to name him an athlete. We're going to let him go out there and do his thing. And that's exactly what Jahdae Barron does. It kind of reminds me of the way that they would use an Earl Thomas. Like, imagine if you could use Earl Thomas and then also make him a cornerback. That's kind of what Barron did. A true Swiss Army knife, played outside, he played in the slot, he played in the box as a dime linebacker at times for Texas. He's quicker than he is fast, which I would refer to that as a quick, twitchy athlete, kind of like somebody like, again, Raiders fans, Amik Robertson, where he's not going to go run somebody down in a 40, but you need somebody to move and win in a phone box. Jahdae can do a lot of that stuff. He can also defend the run. He's not afraid to be a great coverage corner, and he's also really good at being able to go out there and blitz. He's not like a player like Kyle Hamilton, and I'm not saying that they would use him like a Kyle Hamilton, but the new position that I do think is going to start catching on in the NFL are the Swiss Army knife DBs that can go out there and play almost like a joker role. Jahdae Barron is my new number 1 corner, and I know the Raiders like that kid a lot. Let's go to number 6 on the list. It's Mason Graham at defensive tackle. Quite frankly, I can't believe he's number 6 on my list, and I say that because, hell, he might be the favorite player that I have in this draft. That's not the guy that you're going to see coming up here that's going to be ranked number 1 essentially on my list. But Mason Graham is somebody that you put him on the interior, and we have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. I also, though, like Adam Butler a lot, and the Raiders also like Adam Butler a lot. They gave him a 3-year deal. You also got Christian Wilkins. They also have Tyree Wilson. It's not that I don't like Graham. It's, to me, there are other bigger needs out there that we could potentially get at pick number 6. I love the way that he sheds blocks. I love the way that he takes on double teams, and he would really help out Crosby be the best version of himself. You can also tell, and I love this about players on the interior, when a guy comes from a wrestling background. JPJ was a wrestler in high school, and you can tell when he goes out there and he gets his hand on somebody, like there's that old saying, at least where I grew up, you don't mess with wrestlers, and you don't mess with farmers. They're just a lot stronger than what you really think that they are, and they have certain techniques that, you just don't grow up learning how to do. Mason Graham is a mauler on the interior, but because I think that the Raiders' defensive line is probably their strongest, not probably, it is their strongest asset on defense, I would like for them to be able to go out and look at another position, but let's not get it twisted. If Mason Graham is called to the Raiders during draft day, I'm going to be absolutely ecstatic. Before we get into the top players that I would want the Raiders to pick at number 6, reminder, if you need a Geno Smith jersey, they are available. Go to chatsports.com/Raiders jerseys. You're not going to get a jersey that says Smith 00 on it. Whenever Geno announces his number, it's going to be number 7. Trevon Merrick was 7 last season. He's not on the team this year. You're going to get a jersey, but the reason why you got to pre-order is because normal fans are going to wait until it says 7. I'm telling y'all, you can pre-order the jersey now. When the jersey's there, then you're going to be able to get it, and you're going to be one of the very first people to have a Geno Smith Raiders jersey. If you want to get a Brock Bowers, a Max Crosby, any other type of jersey, women's, youth, you want OGs like Bo Jackson, Howie Long, all those, chatsports.com/Raiders jerseys. I will also say this. look into jersey insurance. That way, if a player is traded, you can get a brand new jersey. Chatsports.com/Raiders jerseys. Let's go to number 5, and I'm probably the lowest guy in the Raiders world that has Jeanty as the number 5 option for the silver and black. And it's not because I don't love me some Jeanty. It's simply because you got to be able to build an offensive line. You got to put a lot of other pieces around Jeanty to make taking a running back at pick number 6 worth it. I'm not a dummy, though. Like, there is so much rumors, so much hype around the idea of the Raiders taking Jeanty. Mel Kiper put out a mock, Jeanty at number 6. Daniel Jeremiah, Jeanty at number 6. I feel like half the time, it's why I don't even look at some mock drafts anymore, because I can close my eyes and go, there is a better than 50% chance that Jeanty is going to be the pick mocked to the Raiders at number 6. He is a compact runner, incredible strength. My favorite part of his game might be his balance and his burst. For him to be able to get popped and then quickly put a foot in the dirt, get north and south, love it. I think he's got great vision. I think his patience would be phenomenal in a Chip Kelly system. He can run through you. He can hit a home run. He's got good hands. Does need to work a little bit on his receiving game. Does need to work on his pass protection, but I'm not trying to draft a running back that's this talented, like at number 6, that also is not a complete package. Jeanty is a complete package to me at running back. I think he's clearly the number 1 running back in this year's class, but the reason why I have him ranked where I do, it's not because of Jeanty. Hell, Jeanty, you could say, is probably a top 3 prospect in this class. It's because if there is one position that is extremely deep this year, it is running back. And if you could get a running back in round 2, round 3, you might argue that your overall team might look better by passing on Jeanty at number 6. Let's go to number 4 here. It's going to be Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver from Arizona. And there is only one wide receiver in college football the past 2 years that has had over 1,300 receiving yards. His name is Tetairoa McMillan. At 6'5", 210 pounds, he's got a relationship, a good one, with Raiders offensive line coach Brennan Carroll, Pete Carroll's son. McMillan and Carroll had some overlap for a few years there in Arizona, but if you're looking for a true X, and it's been well documented that the Raiders are looking for a true X, he is the best wide receiver if he was on the free agent market, and if the Raiders want to be able to go out and get a true one and not have to pay him a crazy amount of money, you could just take him at 6. He is a tall, rangy wide receiver, which fits exactly what Geno Smith does well. He throws up these fade balls. I've said it often. I want a guy that turns 50-50 balls into 80-20, and that's what McMillan does. He's a glider, easy motion, can run a complete route tree, reminds me a lot of a Drake London and a Mike Evans. And that style of receiver paired with Geno Smith, I would rather the Raiders take Tetairoa McMillan than Ashton Jeanty based on what this team looks like right now. Let's go to the number 3 here on the list. It's going to be Will Campbell, offensive lineman for LSU. If you don't win in the trenches, you're not going to win in the NFL. I am a trench builder, and that is why I am going with Will Campbell here, and I'm going to put him as an offensive lineman. There's going to be some teams that say that he can't play tackle because he's got short arms, and this was a joke that we heard at the Combine, and I'm almost wondering if it's serious. When Will Campbell would put his arms down, he couldn't put his hands in his pockets. That's how short his arms are. True T-Rex arms. The reason why I have Campbell here, though, is because I think that you could potentially put him at left guard. I think that you could potentially put him at right tackle. Hell, maybe you put him at left tackle and you kick Colt Miller over to the right side, though Miller might want a new contract in order to do that. He is a stud in the run game. He is a stud in the pass game as a blocker. He has the ideal height, bulk, athleticism. He is extremely athletic. If he had long arms, I actually think he'd be no doubt a top 5 pick, and we would have started the show off of you're never going to get Will Campbell at 6. But because he's got shorter arms and teams are afraid of that, I could see him sliding a little bit, but I do love me some Will Campbell because I want to win in the trenches. And if you're not having a dominant offensive line, then why the hell did we just go trade for Geno Smith? Let's go to the next name here. It's Armand Membou, the offensive tackle from Missouri. And the more and more tape I watch on this guy, the more and more I fall in love with him. He's 6'3". He's 315 pounds. He had an overall PFF grade of 90.4. But the reason why I love Membou, his ability to run, his ability to move is great for what Chip Kelly wants. We also have the ability to pass protect, run block. He does that at a very high level. Also, he played right tackle the past 3 seasons where, Campbell was on the left side. You draft Armand Membou, you let him take over for DJ Glaze, and that instantly makes this Raiders offensive line a top 10 unit. And that's how confident I am. He's got the highest upside of any offensive lineman in this draft, but he's also ready to start on day one. Also, one of my favorite notes that I saw from a Missouri coach said that there's nobody that's going to outcompete him, and he loves to embarrass people. I want an offensive lineman that not only wants to just push your dick in the dirt, he wants to rub your face in a little bit too. And when you listen to Armand Membou, at the NFL Combine, that primal scream that he was letting out and running the 40, it's because it matters to him. And when you listen to about a player who wants to not only change his life, but everybody's life around him, there is not a player that I am more confident in right now to be an offensive tackle prospect for the next 10 years than Armand Membou. And you know what? I also think that John Spytek values tackle play. Pete Carroll values tackle play, and I think that they also value it because of the numbers that Membou and Will Campbell have put up. Like, I don't throw around these type of numbers lightly, but the only offensive lineman in NFL Combine history to be 315 pounds or more, to have a 30-inch vertical, and then run a sub-5 40-yard dash at that size, Will Campbell, Armand Membou, Tristan Wirfs, who John Spytek drafted, and Trent Williams. If you are a believer that winning in the trenches is important, those are 2 guys that I think that you got to consider drafting and trying to make this offensive line overall a whole lot flipping better. But we still got one more name to go. So you're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. I want you to scroll on down and tell me, who do you think number 1 is on the list? Because I think it might surprise you. Before I reveal who number 1 is, I do want to put in some honorable mentions. Shedeur Sanders is not going to crack my list here. There are all those players that I mentioned. I would take over Shedeur. Tyler Warren, tight end at Penn State. Believe me, I never thought Brock Bowers was going to be a pick at 13. Tyler Warren, Brock Bowers would be fun. That also means that you're moving on from Michael Mayer. Matthew Golden, one of the notes that we had at the Combine was somebody did tell us that Golden is the number 1 receiver on some teams' big boards. Could be something to keep in mind. And then Emeka Egbuka, he obviously has that connection to Chip Kelly. I don't think that that's going to be somebody at 6. I don't think Matthew Golden would be somebody at 6. I think that those 2 receivers could be names to keep an eye on. Maybe the Raiders try to trade back in to round 1. So what do I want the Raiders to do at pick number 6? The number 1 thing I want them to do. Notice how I said thing. I want the Raiders to trade back. And I know that I started the show off saying the top players. The top player I want the Raiders to pick, Armand Membou. In fact, the top 4 players, and I think it's clear-cut, are all up on your screen. But the number 1 thing that I want the Las Vegas Raiders to do at pick 6 is to move back. And I say that because there are a lot of players that you could take at 6 that I think that could be later on, like, honestly available to you at picks 12, 13, 14, 15. I also know that the Raiders have been playing it safe in free agency. That also means, though, you're going to need more starters and you're going to need more depth. If we're going to need more starters and more depth that come from the draft, I want to get as many players as I humanly possibly can in those top 3 rounds, in those top 4 rounds, because after 3, 4 rounds, the talent level in 5, 6, 7 drastically falls off. The quarterback, I think it's okay. You can find a day 3 guy, but instead of having only 3 picks in the first 3 rounds, having only 4 picks in the top 107, if the way that the Raiders operate in free agency, I want them to try to get 5 to 6 picks in the top 107. So in my mind, I'm trading back in the first round, and I wouldn't even be upset if the Raiders had to try to trade back yet again, because if the idea is that we're going to try to place certain players in the draft that have to start, you better go out and you better get some extra picks, because this team right now is too thin depth-wise to rely on the NFL draft the way that I think that we're relying on it right now. So one more time, let's go through this. The top players that I want the Raiders to pick at number 6, Jalen Walker, Jihaad, Campbell, Will Johnson, Jalon, Barron, Mason Graham, and then Ashton Jeanty, Tetairoa McMillan, Will Campbell, Armand Membou. And then at number 1, I want the Raiders to trade back. This is not based on how talented I think these players are. This is simply based on what the Raiders need, what the Raiders want, and ultimately what I think makes us the best overall football team. In my book, the player that makes the Raiders the best overall football team to go out and draft at pick 6 is, in fact, Armand Membou.